Hello there. So, after the last mail video went out, I was really surprised at just how many people wanted a server update video. I kind of figured people were over those by this point, but no, there were tons of comments, both on the video itself, on Patreon, in Discord messages. So, after 3 years, we're gonna do another server update video. And this is gonna be a big one because I'm gonna be replacing the motherboard. But not only that, because of how awesome the motherboard is, I'm gonna be able to put a new graphics card in there. And why put a new graphics card in there? Well, I'm playing Mad Max here on my Steam Deck, except I'm not playing it on my Steam Deck. I'm playing it on the server because I have every single Steam game I own installed on this thing. All right, was that a good enough hook? Good, because we're not really gonna focus about gaming. I don't really care that much about it. What the GPU is really for is my video rendering, but this is an RTX 2070 that was given to me quite a long time ago now by Dogface, who was here in Phoenix when they did. This was part of the other servers that I was given, but those are more dedicated type system servers. Let me explain. This server has been in some carnation powering my channel for about 5 years now. This thing is a champ, but it has so many jobs that it has to do because of how I designed it. It is my primary video storage server. Almost all of those hard drive bays are full. It is my video ingest server. I have an SSD slot in the front of this that I now put drives directly into for importing footage. And then it has to work on that footage, both to pre-process it for editing and the final renders. So this server has essentially been my coworker and has been instrumental in how I make videos. Now, not everyone needs a dedicated server to make videos, but the way I leverage this thing makes this just the best possible solution for me to work. Now, there's a lot that's gone into this computer, and for the most part, I've covered every step of building it in previous videos. It's just been humming along in the background for the last 3 years without any updates because not a lot has happened. Pretty much the only thing that has happened I didn't show on camera was I did eventually upgrade the HBA for connecting my SATA drives a lot more sanely. We'll see. It's 9316i for those of you who know what that means. But for the most part, it has remained unchanged, using E5 2690s in a Supermicro X9 DRD-IF. Now, in the last mail video, thanks to Kevin, I was sent this, a Supermicro X9 DRD-HF. Now, this is not too dissimilar from the board that's already in this machine and powering it. However, there are two main differences. One is that this supports E5 2690 V2 processors, and that's how it is equipped. And more crucially, number two, I can actually fit a full-size real GPU directly into the motherboard, which I can't do in there, as you'll see. So today my objective is to fully replace the motherboard with this, and the lowly 1070 that's been working away in this thing with this RTX 2070, which will actually be a significant bump because that added a lot of new features that I think I'll be able to benefit from. Now, before we do the part swap, I have the server up and running here so that we can try and get some before performance benchmarks and then compare it to after I put in the new parts. I'm not sure how much of a performance gain I will get, but there are a couple of things I'm hoping for. One, these are actual Supermicro CPU coolers that are made for these platforms. So I'm hoping that they are doing a better job of cooling the CPUs. Because one of the things I found as I used this system in the long run was that the Dynatron coolers that I had put on there weren't really fully capable of cooling this, at least with the Noctua fans that I had on it. But it took one very specific workload to finally figure that out. Tesseract, which is an OCR program for PDFs, and genuinely, nothing I had done to this system up until that point had actually pushed it over the edge of overheating. Only Tesseract. And I even ran Prime 95 on it, so I don't know what to say. But I'm hoping that those will make it so that I can run Tesseract loads on this thing in OCR PDFs before I upload them to archive.org. So that's one thing. The other things are actual performance gains that I'm hoping to see with video encoding and rendering. But let's get started with a couple of tests with the server so that we can get a baseline performance. Now I'm going to quickly mention here what this is, because I've kind of wanted to for a while, but none of my videos it really has ever made sense to mention it. This is a NEX dock. This is essentially a modern day terminal. I have HDMI in over here, in, not out, USB in, as in this becomes a client device that goes to a host, and then this is just a charging cable because I know I'm gonna be here for a while, and I have to use an HDMI splitter so that I can give you guys a direct feed view. But normally I'd be able to cruise up to something like this, plug in 2 cables, or if it has USB-C video, which unfortunately that 2070 does not, just 1 cable, and then this is a modern terminal that can work with that. It's even touchscreen. It's kind of crazy. Also works with my phone. I frequently do remote desktop through my phone using NoMachine, which is the remote desktop software that I've come to prefer nowadays. It's actually way better than X2Go. So this is one of my favorite devices that I've picked up recently. Not cheap, but it's a very handy Swiss Army knife of different functions. So let's start by taking a look at a Tesseract load. So I'm gonna go to my computers folder here, and I'm gonna go into my documents for self-made scans. All right, I'm gonna go into the work folder, and I have some options here. So here is a scan that we can go ahead and attempt this on. Oh my gosh, I just realized we're not even getting close to a full test here. What's going on is ImageMagick is not able to utilize all the disk space that it should. And we're gonna set this to something stupid like 32 gigs. I think we may have to take the Tesseract test here with some leaping mountains of salt, because it took 29 minutes for it to run that. I have no idea why. I don't think that should have taken that long. So we're gonna do 2 more tests, but yeah, that one might be out. I wanted 3, 1 major CPU, 1 mixed CPU and GPU, and 1 mostly GPU, but man. All right, next I'm going to do a demonstration of converting some footage. So I'm moving some phone footage that I have into my import folder, and I'm going to convert those to a different format that will work better for DaVinci Resolve. Now, sometimes I do this way, sometimes I do it a different way. These files are MP4 because that's what my phone records in. It's fairly common, except that the Linux version of DaVinci Resolve, they won't pay for the license to use AAC audio. They just refuse for some reason. So even though you can open an MP4 video file and see the H.264 video content, you get no sound. Thanks, Blackmagic. So we're gonna run my FixVA script here. So let's go ahead and open that so you can see exactly what this does. This is CPU-based video encoding here. So this is a good test of this. But yeah, so here is everything, and then we get PCM 24-bit audio, just because if you're gonna convert it to something for editing purposes, you might as well convert it to a very easy to edit format. So we're gonna run FixVA here. And this whole thing, these are standard scripts that I use all the time. So the way that I have this set up is I just tell it the destination folder, but I'm gonna lie to it and I'm gonna tell it that it's GoPro footage because I don't want it to mix it up and kind of break this project too much. So I'm gonna do this, and then it will go through and convert all of these. Now I'll mention here, this script in particular is not supposed to use NVENC. It might seem like it would be useful. There's an NVIDIA GPU in here. Why wouldn't I convert this with NVENC and offload some of that to the GPU that'll eventually be in here to make it run faster by splitting the load? NVENC is not particularly high quality footage, so at this stage in the video work, I'm usually converting footage before I import it into DaVinci Resolve. So I want to make sure that I don't reduce the quality of the video. So I usually up convert from a lower quality to a higher quality, kind of just hoping to preserve whatever video compression artifacts were already there in the new one, not add more on top of it, because you can easily make it a lot worse. All right, 10 minutes to complete. That's a lot better. Okay, so that's a pretty good test. 10 minutes and 29 seconds exactly. All right, and I've already saved the time there so we can refer to that later. Now I want to do the final test, which I'm actually going to split into 2 parts. If I go over to here, I've opened my video editing software, and there's 2 things that I want to render. The first one is this. Now, this is a shot of the heater on the back of a CRT, but this was a very noisy shot. So I actually have a section in here for grading that does a lot of visual noise correction. And that is usually much more resource intensive. I'm not 100% sure if it's GPU or CPU based, but I bet it's CPU based. So we're gonna render that out as an attempt at a mixed load. And then I'm gonna just grab another slightly longer section and try and render that, which I believe will be much more GPU based since it doesn't have to do a lot to the footage. Now I just have to tell it to render all, and now it will render both of those clips. It'll also save the time that it took to render them, like you can see in the upper right for the full video render. Yeah, it took an hour to render that entire video. I'll actually go ahead and do a full re-render of that video once that all is in there, but I don't want to do a full re-render right now. I mean, I literally, from my perspective, I just rendered that like 2 days ago. So yeah, that's representative of this hardware. And we are at 1 minute and 21 seconds and 42 seconds there. So those are the times to beat. Those aren't great tests. I will probably rely more on the full video render, but there are some examples. All right, I was trying to think about what else I might need to do here, but I think I'm ready to start the hardware stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and shut the server down here. Now I know it's heresy. I'm running a GUI on a Linux server of all things. Only Windows people have to put up with that. I have to run a GUI on the server for my video editing software, DaVinci Resolve. It has a remote render mode, but even that actually runs with the GUI. And if you try and run the headless version, I've found that it doesn't actually work without a GUI. Yet still, there might be some ways to trick that into working, but I have not looked into it because it just hasn't been worth the effort. So I just run a GUI on the server, and it gets me other benefits like being able to do the Steam Remote Play. So it's not the worst thing to have on here. All right, I'm gonna move this off to the side, and we're gonna go ahead and take a look at the inside of this thing, which pretty heavy. And I can actually start to update you on what all has changed now. All right, it's hard to tell if the camera is overexposed or if it's just the dust that is making everything seem a lot brighter than it is. Sorry, I didn't clean the server before I brought it in to work on it. But this is what this thing is set up like for right now. And I'm looking forward to this because one of the things we're going to be replacing is the Intel X520 network card, I think, here, because I was also given a super micro 10 gigabyte or 10 gig NIC, which I'm gonna have to remove the bracket on. That'll be fun. And I'm hoping that this one is much less stupid with the cooling, so I might be able to ditch this fan, which can be a big problem with noise, which I'm actually gonna pull it out now because once I do that, then you'll be able to see the other significant change that has happened since the last video. There we are. That is an LSI 9300 16i. I'm gonna go ahead and pop out that retention screw because it's gonna come out anyway and show that to you here. So this is a SAS HBA. It's a SATA controller that can interface with 16 hard drives. You know why that's great? Because the case has 16 bays on the front. It made so much sense to finally take the plunge and get one of these because as far as I'm concerned, this thing is just part of the case now. It is what this thing should have come with to be able to use all those drives. So that has been a massive improvement. I'll also mention that since the last video where I talked about the storage stuff, I was like, yeah, it'll last me 2 to 3 years with the space. Well, that amount of time happened. I was pretty much dead on. So I had to get more hard drives. So I now have 4 14 terabyte hard drives in the server in that RAID 5 configuration, same as last time. So that got me 50% more storage space. I left the other array in there, but it's getting utilized for other things. But worst case, if I overflow on the new stuff, I can put it back onto the old one. So yeah, there's a whack ton of storage space in this thing now, which has been really awesome. But the utilization just keeps going. So eventually I'll be looking at even bigger hard drives to put in here. Yay. Let me pull this card off to the side. I don't want to disconnect those, at least not without marking them in the order that they go in. So that I can address this. Yeah. I actually don't remember what everything is here. If I recall correctly, these are all together to form a single RAID 0 array, and these are what I put proxies and stuff on. These are drives that were sent to me that are 480 gigabytes, if I remember correctly. So they're a size that's a little difficult to pair with anything else as far as RAID arrays. So I ended up just making them their own thing for scratch. So that works great because I don't always edit over the 10 gigabit network connections. Sometimes I'm editing with my laptop just to have a change of pace, or actually sometimes I use a laptop because it has a much better color rendering screen, so I use that as my final. Now these are two 4 terabyte SSDs that are in RAID 0 for capacity, and all of my ongoing video projects are stored on these. Now, that sounds a little spooky. I mean, because it is. It's not a good idea. I shouldn't do that. But man, it works great for speed and stuff. I really need to get into a workflow where everything that's stored onto these drives, because I import directly from here to these, gets slowly mirrored to one of the other hard drive arrays after the fact. But yeah, being able to just massively dump the import data onto these has been fantastic. One last final thing. The power supply has been upgraded to a Seasonic Prime. I don't remember how many watts. I want to say 1200 watts or something crazy ridiculous like that, where I just said, I'm done, have it be the whole outlet. Not gonna have to worry about it anymore. So yeah, that's what that is. And it's pretty jamming. It's done everything I could ever possibly want. So yeah, I mean, it is a power supply. It's not that exciting, but it is nice to just be kind of top of the line, done, not having to worry about it anymore. All right, let's continue on here. We need to get the graphics card out so that I can actually start to remove the motherboard, which I think the new one is just barely gonna fit and fill up the whole space, but thankfully I don't have to actually move the fan bracket back. It looks like I need to attach the top sides still. But yeah, I don't think I have to move that. There is a second position for the screws right there. That would not be fun. It would really cramp up the cables in there that are totally not covered in dust. I promise you, I'll blow this thing out with an air compressor when I get home. I'm not doing it in the office, despite there being an air compressor right there, because the dust will just stay in the office. That would be a terrible idea. Now, continuing on, I forgot I did this. All right, we have the existing 10 gigabit NIC here with my patent pending artisan quality handcrafted cooler, TT Cooler Alpha V0.01. Yeah, that's I put 2 of my squirrel cage fans on there. I wonder if these even spin anymore. I can't see them when they're in there. Because yeah, it was just impossible to keep this thing cool. So I ended up making this shroud, kind of like a blower fan on a graphics card. Oh yeah, that's right. I moved the heat sinks I bought for these were so terrible, I moved one of them from one of the other cards that had more serious damage. If you don't know what the deal is with these, I was sent like 8 of these or something a long time ago, years and years ago now, and some of them had damage to the boards and stuff, and it was just to try and get some 10 gigabit cards going. So this was one of those. Still rocking them. They still work great. The ones that weren't damaged, that is. So this one, I harvested the bigger, better finned cooler from a different card because it had some terrible little garbage one there, and that's been working great for cooling. Haven't had a single issue with it since I did that. What'll end up happening is they'll go into overheat mode, and they even have an LED on them for when they're overheating. And then once they're overheating, they don't have the dignity to just stop working. They just work weird. So it makes it really difficult to troubleshoot sudden inconsistent network issues. So yeah, that was a massive improvement, but I'm hoping that Supermicro one works a little better, although I am mildly concerned about not having the full length bracket. But it's not the only thing that'll be in there like that, because I also have this, which this is the boot drive. So yeah, actually I put a 1 terabyte NVMe drive. This was the drive from my desktop, and I had the idea, wait a minute, when there's a sale on NVMe drives, I could get a bigger one for my desktop and then hand me down the NVMe drive to my server, and then that'll make the performance of the web hosting and stuff a lot better. So I did that, and it worked great. So yeah, that's in there. And the this is worth rotating. I had this thing plugged into this slot right here, which meant that the backside of the connector is literally inside of this heat sink here, okay? It slots into the fins there. So I put Scotch tape over the board edge so it wouldn't conduct. Maybe it's a good thing I didn't make videos about this stuff. All right, and then the last normal card here is another SCSI controller. This one goes to all of those SSDs, and if I remember right, this is the one that has the weird rules about how the drives are exposed to the operating system. You have to go through and individually initialize each drive and mark them as a JBOD, and it formats them when it does that, if I remember right. So we're gonna go ahead and leave all of this connected. I'll just drape it off to the side. That way I don't have to deal with whatever nonsense. And if I remember right, this one also has size limitations. So I think 2 terabyte might be the max size I can get out of this thing. So I've been using the SSDs with that. I know that probably also means that it's a very slow card, but I can't win them all. Although at this point, I probably should just buy a second LSI 9316i and just throw all the SSDs on that, huh? One of the reasons why I have all these weird hodgepodge cards and nonsense in here is this riser cable is what allows this GPU to connect, because this heatsink is right here in the way. The card obviously is visibly longer than it won't fit. So that also put a limit on how tall the cards would be, because this is higher over here than this is. Now I could have tried to get a longer PCIe riser cable, but this worked and I didn't want to chance it and have to go through like getting another one. Also, they're really expensive. So I've just been sticking with low profile cards in this area, but with the motherboard swap, this isn't going to be necessary. So speaking of which, we can now remove the graphics card. And this is one of the few parts not coming back, because we're putting that 2070 in there. I love the fact that it's been 3 years since I've done the last video on this. I don't even know how many subscribers I will have had at that point. I don't really care about subscriber counts or that kind of stuff, but I'm realizing there's probably a very significant portion of my audience that is not familiar with this server. So you're just seeing this horrible, horrible machine out of nowhere. Trust me, this thing has had a reason to exist like this, and it's a good computer, I swear. That 1070 has had every single video that I've made for the last 3 years go through it. That thing has been a trooper. It has earned its rest. It's kind of crazy that I'm replacing it with a 2070, and 2070 may not be the long-term solution. Now that it's not going to be horrible to change out the boards, I might try my old 1080 Ti in here as well, because I have that sitting around, which I believe will have more VRAM than the 2070. And and I might just see which is better for my workflow. With the 4K footage that I do, more VRAM is usually the answer. But I can so much more easily trial and error new solutions now, so there's no harm in giving it a shot at some point. All right, next I need to get all of these cables out of here, so I'm gonna go ahead and document what these all look like before I unplug them. It's gonna be different on the other board, but I think all of the same basic onboard peripherals are shared between them, so it'd be easy enough to just replicate how this is set up. All right, and then there is 1.5 USB headers here. I'm not kidding. So one thing you may not know is that USB 2.0 headers are actually 2 USB ports worth of pins. So you can't have one like that. So yeah, I don't remember what that one's going to. It might be the Corsair Commander, but yep, there's 1.5 2.0 headers. Yes, it's really dirty. I know. Now, one thing I know is I think the new and the old motherboards have the exact same front I/O panel connector, but this one is labeled and the other one isn't. So I'm gonna take a picture of how that's laid out and then make sure I just plug them back in the same way. Hopefully it'll work. These fans are a thing. I'm not sure exactly what's gonna happen to those now. They're 80mm Noctuas. I might just set them aside and start using those in vintage systems, because those are definitely always way louder than you would think they would be. But I think that's it. I can pull this board out now. And there it is. All right, since I'm sure some of you are screaming about how dirty this is inside, I will go ahead and vacuum this out using my special ESD safe vacuum. That way I can knock this down a little bit, because there is a lot in here. All right, it's a big improvement. You know, I've got the new board right here, and I'm looking over the existing standoffs, and some of them are definitely going to have to move. So I'm going to move this in and out a handful of times here, I suspect, to make sure that everything looks good. So I'm going to work on that for a bit before we get the final thing in here for real. That's unfortunate. I don't think there's going to be a single screw in this whole top corner near the rear I/O. Oh, that sucks, because the one on the new board is way farther out. Oh, that's unfortunate. I might put a pad or something there, because that's going to be really bad. Yeah, just a little bit of something there will help a lot. But yeah, no, there's only one screw in that whole corner, and that's going to be it. Ugh. All right, now let me catch you up on what has happened on the motherboard, because a couple of days ago I figured it'd be prudent to test the new hardware first before tearing apart my server, because my server's kind of integral to what I do. So I put all of this together to make sure that it would work. So I did go ahead and mounted the CPUs in the motherboard and assembled the Supermicro heatsinks. There was one unfortunate thing. One of the heat sinks didn't actually fit together correctly. The heat pipes have like solder blobs on them, and the holes were not sized big enough for that. So I had to custom file this one a little bit to fit. But other than that, it's fine. But it all ended up working out overall. While we're here, let me really quick compare the sticks. So this is PC33 14900R. This is PC3L-10600R. Let me compare the two to see which is faster. These are actually 16 gig DIMMs. That's why they held so much more in the same space. This has twice as many DIMM slots, so theoretically it could have twice as much RAM, I think. So yeah, I want to make sure that these are an upgrade in performance as far as read-write, because I have not been using the capacity as much, so I'm just curious. Okay, confirmed. The 16 gig sticks are 1333 and these are 1866. Not a huge difference, but I want to try that out. Worst case, I can't always pop these in later. They're not going anywhere. It's pretty much time to drop the motherboard in there. I'm gonna do myself a favor here, and I'm gonna remove the screw holding up the other edge of this so this can kind of lean back, and I'm hoping that'll make the cables not a problem. So hopefully that's everything out of the way. Yeah, I kind of just gave up on cable management with this thing. There's too much going on in this little box. So it's a bit of a nightmare. So my goal is going to be to put it in this way and then tuck it in like that. We'll see if I accomplish that. I was about to pop this in, but there's one other thing I wanted to talk about that's different between this board and the last ones. And that's to have to do with the fan headers. Now, I mentioned in the last video where I installed the Corsair Commander Pro that these boards have like weird zone things going on where the CPU speeds are not always controlled correctly, and that the other boards did not have the CPU fan zones. This one, I think, does, and I didn't realize that until this morning, because all of these headers over here are labeled like fan 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or whatever, but the CPU fans are labeled like with letters, fan A and fan B. And of course, the CPU fan headers are way over here. Yeah, that's fan B and that's fan A. So I'm going to try plugging these in here first and see how that goes. I don't know. I'm mildly curious. IPMI is going to work on this machine, so if it can manage its own fan temps, you know, I don't have a problem with that. So for right now, I'm going to actually have the CPU fans plugged into the motherboard. They weren't on the other one. They were plugged into the Corsair Commander Pro fan controller, just because it made my life so much easier being able to actually, you know, control the fan temps so that they worked. They all look perfect now, except for that one since it's obviously missing, but hopefully that foam pad helps. I don't know. Oh, it's in. Ah! Okay, I'm too eager. I gotta know, how's this gonna fit? I wanna know. Because I'm also concerned about how tall it is. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be a breeze! Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's so awesome. All right, now the many motherboard screws. I almost reached over there to put a screw in there, but of course, I can't. Okay. Oh boy, all right. Now I plug in all the things, like the GPU that I'm so excited about. Now there's one more really awesome benefit to this motherboard over the other one, and it accomplishes it in two ways. For one, it's wider. It has two more slots over here. But the other thing that it does to accomplish all of this to fit this GPU is that the CPUs are slightly occluding each other. So this one's gonna get some hot air from that one. On the other board, the two CPUs completely miss each other. So yeah, I think they also maybe could have done that, but they gave it more RAM slots as well. So, I don't know. We'll see how bad that is. I'm gonna guess it won't make a difference at all. But one thing I'm gonna do to make sure the GPU can breathe as much as possible, I'm actually gonna put my NVMe adapter right here in front of the fan, so I have the shortest possible thing there. And I'm gonna go ahead and leave all my tape on the edge connector, because why not? Oh my gosh, that fits in so snugly. That's perfect. Oh my gosh, it blocks nothing. That's wonderful. Actually, I might want to plug in a bunch of other stuff, like all the other SATA cables first. Yeah, you know what? That GPU's coming out, actually. Oh, that's gonna suck in the future. I hadn't thought about that. Oh, fun. All right, I'm gonna mess with all this cable nonsense a bit off camera, because you're not gonna be able to see anything with me jamming my hands all around in here anyway, so I'll just check in with you in a moment. Oh gosh, there's everything plugged in. Super micro. What is wrong with you? Why did you put all of the USB port headers on the back of the board? The ports should be towards the front where the stuff is. There's already USB ports on the back of the motherboard. We don't need more headers back there. Yeah, I actually had to move the Corsair Commander Pro. I'm hoping all of the fan cables are still connected and routed everywhere, but oh man, that's brutal. So there's that. I also connected the power connectors and the header for power button jumpers, maybe? I don't know. There we are. And oh. I remembered what these drives are, by the way. One of these is the boot part of the system because it can't actually boot from the NVMe drive. So one of them has like Grub and the Linux kernel and stuff on it. And then the home folder and a bunch of other stuff is actually mounted to the NVMe drive over there. The other one is a recovery drive that I set up in case I have a system, you know, like maybe this weird thing where I need to be able to boot a full normal operating system. So I think that's what's on there. So I should have something here that can boot, just I don't know how easily this is gonna go getting it back up to where I had it before. And then get the power plugged in, conveniently already run here. Why is there no standard for which direction power cables mount? So these are opposite, so the years of memory in the cable of being bent the other way is now gonna have to be fought against. Great. All right, now I only have one more card. Oh wait, I got two more cards I need to add. I gotta add a 10 gig card. I'm thinking I might just stick this back in here for now. Not because I'm that attached to it, but because I am running out of time for today and I would like to get this thing back home and start working on any software stuff that I need to. And then I can swap over to the actual Supermicro 10 gig card in a little bit. Because right now the 10 gig stuff is going to be looking for that card and I'm going to have to figure out how to mess with that. Wow. I'm really glad I went with these right angle cables for this, by the way. Normally you get straight out, and while I could have theoretically routed it there, what was true on the other system seems to hold true here, in that trying to thread the needle between the CPUs kind of works out better. Matter of fact, I'm going to go for the full slot all the way over there, because then the way that it's all bending seems to work out the best here. All right, I think that's everything. So I could go ahead and fire this thing up in a second. Well, we can see if my power button wiring is correct. Although I did actually set this one to always power on power loss, so it should just fire up. Wow, that's such an improvement, though. Just it's normal. I can't believe it. Okay, so I think it's all ready to go here. I've got I don't have networking connected. Let's go ahead and do that really quick. I'm not connecting to IPMI just yet. So this is power for the power supply. We're ready. So firing it up. What dust? It's fine. There we go. I'm gonna hit F11 to maybe be able to pick my boot device. All right, now this should get to boot menu. 870s, yep, those are the two 8 terabytes. And there we are. Just so many. It's one of the Kingstons. I don't remember. Okay, UEFI, OS, or that's probably the same. We're gonna go with this. Well, that's annoying. Yeah, all right. This is gonna be more fun than I can deal with right now. All right, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take this thing home. I'm gonna work on it until I can get it working correctly, because I'm pretty sure it's all gonna be software stuff, and that is just gonna be pulling hair for a few hours, so that's not gonna be that exciting to watch. Yeah, I got stuff to figure out. I'll catch up with you in a bit. Well, that was more complicated to get working than I expected. So much so that I actually have my real laptop behind this box, breaking the fourth wall, with a script that I can reference, because There was a lot to cover for this. So first, the server is all back together now and running at home with the new parts and working just fine. I always run the server at home because I use it with a local 10 gigabit connection for editing, and yeah, I just don't run anything out of the office. It doesn't really make sense with how I have everything set up here. But that issue that popped up on the first reboot was actually the RAID 1 array for my video projects failing to mount. After further investigation, it seems like the drive is either failing in a weird way or the operating system is using it wrong because the beginning of the RAID data is being clobbered. If we do a hex comparison of the good and bad drive, we can see that the data at the beginning of the drive is wrong and the MDATM headers are missing. But at the end of the drive, it's all matching up just fine. Now, I attempted manually re-adding the drive back to the RAID 1 array and let it sync for like 8 hours to accomplish this, but on next boot, it was bad again. I need to spend some more time diagnosing this to really understand what's going wrong. The smart data isn't revealing anything of use, but for now, I was able to mount the one good drive, since it was RAID 1, and copy all of the data off onto a different array and then use binds in fstab to go ahead and put everything back to where it should be, because that was a very critical part of my video production process. So I'll get back to this weird drive issue later. It may be recoverable, but I'm not sure. And I think I want to take both of those drives out of the system and use them on another computer just to try and figure it out. Now, on to the good stuff, the performance tests. Before, we ran Tesseract through OCR My PDF on a set test and got 29 minutes and 52 seconds. After swapping in the new hardware here, we got a time of 36 minutes and 13 seconds. There's something wrong with OCR My PDF because that test was 90 pages of medium-sized text, but as a sanity check, I ran it on the super dense 372-page Intel catalog that I scanned with the A-Vision, and it did that in 20 minutes and 8 seconds. So we're just gonna throw out the Tesseract results because they're wildly inconsistent and clearly aren't really telling us anything. So on to the FFmpeg video encoding. Before, we got a time of 10 minutes and 29 seconds, and after, 9 minutes and 56 seconds. It is an improvement, but this is actually kind of exactly in line with what I would have expected. The V1 E5-2690s have a max clock speed of 3.8 gigahertz, while the V2s have a max clock speed of 3.6 gigahertz. The only real difference here is that I have 8 more threads between them. Now, I'm pretty sure FFmpeg's video encoding is more dependent on single-core performance. So if that small time savings is actually consistent, which I didn't run it multiple times to test, it's probably down to the RAM being 40% faster, not the CPUs. So still a benefit. If I hadn't had to deal with the RAID nightmare nonsense, I would have tried to stick the old RAM back in there to get an apples-to-apples comparison, but I need to be done with this video and project so that I can go back to that and figure out what's going on there. Same thing with the 10 gigabit NIC, actually. I haven't put the new one in yet, but that's sitting on my desk at home waiting to be installed once everything has gotten a lot more stable. Bonus section! I have some data for you. As soon as I had the server actually set up and running at home for a longer duration, I started logging the free command to a CSV file. That tells you how much memory you're actually using and how much you have available on Linux on the command line. This let me track how much RAM I was using, let me know if having the amount that I have in there was actually going to be an issue or not. And boom, results. So it looks like, based on the red line, which is the amount of RAM that I'm actually using, and the light blue line, which is the amount of RAM available, the fact that the available RAM is above the used RAM kind of tells you everything you need to know. I am not using even half of the RAM that I have in the system. But thanks to the power of data, I now know I'll be fine with less RAM in the server, so it should be good from here. Now, back to the performance tests. And this is where we get to the real test, DaVinci Resolve video rendering. Now, this is mostly a GPU-based test of the 2070 that was added. And I did 3 tests for this. The 2 small clips that you saw me set up earlier, and I re-rendered that entire video again. Now, as a refresher, the first clip was originally 1 minute and 21 seconds, and the second was 42 seconds. After the parts upgrades, it was 57 seconds and 24 seconds. Now we're talking. Now, the first clip is more CPU intensive, I think, with the noise reduction, so that's why there wasn't as big a performance difference there. But that second clip, the GPU just gets to cruise on through the barely color-corrected data. These were just small samples though. So what do we get when I render out the entire video? The original time was 1 hour and 26 seconds for the version that I actually uploaded to YouTube. And on the new hardware, 37 minutes and 3 seconds. A nearly 2 times performance improvement. Now that is going to be game changing for me. And that has cascading trickle effects everywhere. I import all of my footage and do proxy media generation on it. The actual render times for videos, just general work stuff. I throw a lot at the server through DaVinci Resolve. That 2 times performance improvement is going to be massive for me. And that is only made possible by the new motherboard letting me actually fit a real GPU in there. So after the tests, we know that in all workloads, it's at least a little bit better or maybe massively better. But what about the cooling? I mentioned before that Tesseract loads on the old server would overload it thermally and it would start to have issues. Well, I'm stunned. On the all-core load of the 372-page Tesseract run, it pegged at 60 degrees Celsius. That's wildly lower than the other server, and I think it's a many-pronged result. The new coolers are just straight up better. They're made by Supermicro for this board and these chips. They just seem to perform better. Also, when it's at that full load, they sound perfectly reasonable for a computer at home. They are nothing like a screaming server cooler with the whiny high-pitched fans. They're totally fine. Now also, the V2 chips use 5 whole watts less of power. I mean, it's not much when it's 130 versus 135, but it is something. I think the bigger difference is the jump from 32 nanometers on the V1 to 22 nanometer process on the V2. And yeah, I know, AMD pays TSMC to make tighter tolerance chips than these. This is just a good reminder of how the litho process impacts performance like this. Now, these temps are overall so low that they don't even get up to the control points in the temperature script that I wrote for controlling stuff, and it doesn't even ramp up the case fan to try and counteract it. So I might be able to get them to run even cooler than 60 degrees C by tuning this a little bit to give it a bit more airflow when it starts to reach, oh man, a high temp like 50. But again, that's something I'm gonna have to play with more over time. But with all of the comparisons done, I can say that the new server parts are in and humming along great. Everything is fully functional, including Steam Remote Play. Yeah, I teased you at the start that I wasn't actually gonna cover this, but in reality, it's pretty sweet. Let's take a look. Now again, my server is at home, but with a WireGuard VPN tunnel on the deck, I can trick it into thinking that it's local, and I can stream my games from anywhere. Now, if you're not familiar with how this works, the game actually runs on the server system. So there it is running over remote desktop. And then the video is sent to the client computer here, in this case, a Steam Deck, and the controls from this system are sent back to the server. So I'm leaving the game set to 720p, and we're gonna go ahead and play it here. I'd also like to note that is no machine back there running as my remote desktop software. It's pretty respectively quick, but it's impressive how much faster the Steam Remote Link is. And there we are in the game. Again, this is running on my server at home. It's kind of crazy that you can do this with hardware that you own. Now, the reason I'm so interested in the Steam Remote Play stuff like this is because after I did the video on the digital decay of games from the 2000s, I kind of wanted to take ownership of all of my digital games into my own hands. So I spent time installing every single game in my Steam library on my server. You'll notice every title is totally clear and ready to launch here. I can pick anything I want and start it up. Pick something simple here, Octodad. I don't think I've ever even actually launched this, but I could if I wanted to. But what makes this really cool to me is the ability to do this on the Steam Deck and just know literally everything is right here, ready to go, whatever I want to play. Like, I get a hankering for some Doom 64, I don't have to install it on the deck, I can just stream it. Boom. Doom 64, maybe not the best example, because obviously this will run on the Steam Deck and not take up that much storage to just keep it installed, but I can do this with anything, which is why it's really cool. Although I have been avoiding the Ubisoft and EA titles, just because I don't know how well those launchers are going to work on Linux. Now, there's one other interesting thing I've been trying on here, and that is DaVinci Resolve streamed to my Steam Deck through Remote Play. I figure if Blackmagic can sell the awful speed editor keypad thing, why can't I just use the Steam Deck instead? So here I can actually open the video on replacing the CRT. And here we are with the video open. Now, I've been trying to set this up for better quick editing. So let's say I have the video playing here and I get to a part where I think, oh, that's a good end of the clip. I can just flick the stick here and it trims it to the end. But generally what I want to have happen is to be in the ripple editing mode. Flick that stick. Well, that deleted a little more than I anticipated, but I have undo bound here so that I can check stuff. But yeah, I'm still working out how to make this best work, but the video editing performance through here is hilariously good. I don't necessarily think this is going to become part of my workflow, but it's still kind of nice to know that if I really want to, or I'm in a pinch and out and about, I could theoretically do some rough cuts on this thing. But I think that is it. The RAID problem complicated this a bit, and I have no idea what caused that issue, but elsewise, the server is working great, and I've gotten noticeable performance improvements in several places. Thank you to Kevin for sending the board, and also those coolers as well. He sent those after the mail video. And thank you to Dogface, who gave me the 2070 as well. Did take a while to eventually put it into use, but man, it has made a huge impact now that I have. Well, if you enjoyed this video, there are a lot more old server videos that you could check out if you haven't seen them, so you might want to look at my back catalog. But if you want to look forward to future server videos that I have no idea when might happen, because this thing is pretty solid at this point, well, you might want to subscribe and be notified when those happen. If you want to help support the channel, you can find me on Patreon. But for now, that's it, and I will see you next time.